Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back to the lecture series in animal physiology. So, today we are in the fourth lecture of this week. So, I have kind of given you an overall idea about the structure of the heart. We talked about the conduction system, we talked about the contraction system, but then there is a linkage between the conduction and the contraction system. That is where we kind of ended up. So, today what I will do, I will take a slight reverse gear, because as of now I have not really shown you how it looks in anatomically, or when you see the pictures how it looks like. So, what we will do today, we will run through in the next two classes, we will run through what all we have covered as of now in the cardiac physiology, and these notes will be there with you, and it will be fairly helpful to you to revise the whole thing and get other additional informations, especially in terms of the EKG and all other processes. So, to start off with, so I am on my first slide. So, today I will be kind of rolling you through some of my old slides. So, if you look at the heart, if you look at the real position of the heart in real life, so this is where the organ what we are talking about is sitting, and these are those different vessels which are coming in and coming out, okay, which in a very simplistic note I showed you. And if you look at how many times it beats per day, so this is a magical number, think of it. Why this number is important, I will come very soon. And every day it is almost pumping 8,000 liters of blood per day. Now, having said this, that a heart is beating almost 100,000 times per day, that means the cardiac muscle which are beating, cardiomyocytes, if you remember the action potential of cardiomyocytes, it is something like this, right, followed by again another one, followed by this. So, now why there is such a wonderful plateau zone? One of the reason what has been cited over the years is this plateau zone, what you see out here, this plateau, this is what helps the cardiomyocyte to rest, because if it does, think of it, just try to visualize the action. If it continuously does like this, instead if it, what will happen, it will feel tired. Instead if it does like this, something, a motion like this, a slow motion, in a slow motion if it happens, then it has a room for kind of being more efficient. It is like a marathon runner. You have seen a marathon runner does not run very fast in the beginning. It kind of slow, it maintains a constant velocity all throughout, okay, and in between it kind of gears up the velocity and comes down, and likewise and so on and so forth. So, what I wanted to say here is the reason possibly that these are all possible reasons why evolutionarily cardiac myocyte follows this kind of pattern of action potential. These kind of patterns of action potential, possibly it is believed, gives the cardiac myocyte a window to rest, to move slowly, okay. So, now having said this and having given you these kind of magical numbers that it beats 100,000 times per day and pumping 8,000 liters of blood per day, you can very well visualize what an efficient machine this is. 8,000 liters per day multiplied by, on an average, if a person lives for say 75 years. Now, just do the calculation. 75 years means we are talking about 75 multiplied by 365 multiplied by 8,000 liter. this is for an average individual who is living 75 years, and this machine tirelessly works, and if this machine fails, then that is the end of our story at that point of time. So, which in other words says we should take good care of our heart. We should not take it for granted, and we should be careful about it, right? And usually heart usually beats 60 to 90 times per minute, which is also called the pulse rate. Okay. So, these are some of the infos which I haven't covered. I thought that I might as well cover to give you an overall idea, and look at this. So, this is what consists of your conduction system, conduction, contraction, which is cardiac myocytes, endothelial cell, carrying the blood vessels, carrying the blood, endothelial cells forming the blood vessels, stem cells, okay, which are ensuring that, of course, we do not know whether these stem cells are in any help for your regeneration or not, but there are attempts which are going on. Okay. So, now moving on to the next slide. This is how the actual structure. So, I have drawn all the box and kind of line diagram and everything, and I told you look for all the different ones. So, this is your left atrium, left upper chamber, see this one. This is your right upper chamber. So, you remember right upper chamber, which is the first one to get activated, followed by the left atrium, second one to get activated, third one the right ventricle. So, this is the right ventricle and the left ventricle, which is the fourth one to get activated. So, you remember that graph what I drew you in the beginning. So, this is something like this, okay. And I told you that please look at those valves which are involved in it. So, here are right to right ventricle connection, the valve which is called tricuspid valve. Whenever we talk about tricuspid, that means there are, this valve is something like this, okay. So, there are 3 such entry port, 1, 2, 3, tricuspid, whereas on the left side it is more of a bicuspid valves, okay. And one more thing, so there is a pulmonary valve which is ensuring that the impure blood moves along the pulmonary artery, the only artery in your body carrying plus CO2 blood, right. You remember that I told you, and then we talked about the superior and the inferior vena cava, which is bringing plus CO2 blood, here another one, plus CO2 to the right atrium. From the right atrium, it moves to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, through pulmonary valve, it goes to, through the pulmonary artery, it goes to the lungs, and through the pulmonary vein, the only vein in the body carrying oxygenated blood, comes to the left atrium, and from left atrium, it moves to the left ventricle, and from there through aortic valves, it is pumped through the aorta to the different parts of the body. And aorta is the, as I told you, the biggest or the largest artery. In the beginning of this week, I told you that please go through those different valves, but I thought that I will show you, okay. I hope some of you have already seen it, but those who haven't seen it, here it is, the different kind of valves which are present. And here is your inferior vena cava, which is bringing the blood plus CO2 blood from all over the body, and this is the oxygenated blood, right. Now, this is the cardiovascular system's 2 arms, which we haven't talked, which I have talked to you, but now I am showing the diagrammatic view. So, the pulmonary circuits and the systemic circuit. So, the pulmonary circuit is this small circuit, let me label it this circuit. Okay. So, this is the pulmonary circuit where impure blood from the right ventricle goes to the lungs, get the necessary oxygen here, oxygen, and here it is giving away the CO2 as you could see, and this comes back. So, that is your pulmonary circuit through, if you remember it, through the pulmonary artery and pulmonary valve. Here is the pulmonary valve. Okay. Now, coming back. Okay. So, here you have the pulmonary artery, what I mentioned. Here is the pulmonary vein. Okay. And this is that small circuit which form the pulmonary circuit of the body. And pulmonary circuit is the reverse in terms of the arteries and the vein carrying oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Pulmonary artery carrying the deoxygenated blood and pulmonary vein carrying the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart, to the left upper chamber of the heart or the left atrium, right. Now, you have systemic circuit. The systemic circuit is the rest of the circuit, where you have it is receiving blood from inferior vena cava, superior vena cava, and coming here, moving to the next chamber, and from the next chamber, from the lower chamber, it moves to the pulmonary circuit. Whereas the pure blood which is coming here moves through the aorta to the superior part and to the inferior part of the body and to the different organs. So, what is significant here to look at is, as I told you, it is a closed circuit loop. It is a completely closed circuit loop which is functional here, right. And this closed circuit loop ensures that the amount of blood or amount of fluid remain reasonably constant. So, if there is a loss, we have to take water and other fluid to compensate for it, and of course, that will be mixing with the blood cells, which we will be talking later, and maintain that volume. So, the volume in the system is maintained constant and it continuously circulates without any waste. So, you realize if there is an hemorrhage or something at any point, at any part, so there will be loss of blood. So, internal hemorrhage, which are very difficult to figure out, could lead to a loss of blood. Similarly, external hemorrhage, of course, you can really see that. Okay. So, this is the actual circuit of pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit, what is essential for you to know. There is a link I am giving you, heart contraction and the blood flow. I want you to note down this link and click on to this link later. Once the class is over, you can link up and you can really read through or see the video how that works. Okay. This will help you to kind of get a feel about the heart contraction and the blood flow, and it is a NCBI NIH site, so it should not be a problem. Now, coming to the layers of the myocardium. So, the way the heart, so by this time you must have realized that it is a structure which is pumping blood at a tremendous pace, and the amount of blood it is handling, 8,000 liters per day, it is just magical. And with the force with which it is pumping, if you look at this picture itself, it will be clear. The force with which it is pumping out from here has to be ensured that it covers, because there is it reaches all over the body and comes back in one shot. That is not something so easy. In order to withstand that kind of pressure, this structure is made by nature in a very different way. So, what you see out here is as if like you know, there are, I do not know how many of you have seen when there are coilings and everything takes place within the within the fibers or within the ropes. It's like a coiled rope, super coiled rope. So, there is a lot of coiling and supercoilings happening between the muscle. And this coiling and supercoiling, what you essentially see, it's a extremely coiled and extremely complex structure. That what gives you a very, very interesting rigid architecture of the heart. And these are some of the real life structure of the valves. So, these are those bicuspid, tricuspid pulmonary valves. Okay, this is how they look like. So, these pictures are there to give you a real life situation how the heart really looks like. Okay. Now, moving on. So, I talked to you about the contractile and the conduction system. So, these are the different cell types what I tried to mention you. So, you have the endothelial cell which is forming your blood vessels. You have cardiac muscle cell which are cardiomyocyte, which is essentially the one which is shooting action potentials like with a huge plateau. You have conduction cells which are spontaneously active and sitting at minus 40 millivolt resting membrane potential, whereas these are sitting at a resting membrane potential of minus 70 to minus 80 millivolt. Okay. And here you have the cardiac progenitor cells whose functions are still a mystery. How they are helping, or could they help in repairing of the cardiac myocytes. And here is your AV node, SA node, AV node, bundle of His, Purkinje fiber likewise. Okay. So, this kind of gives you an overall architectural anatomical view about the heart, and this is how in a very interesting way I got this picture. So, that will kind of give you an idea how the real nodes really look like. So, the impulse, so this is what is indicating the automation or automatically triggering the conduction system. Okay. And the impulse travels like this, likewise, and then and these impulses are eventually, I will just change the color for your understanding, are spread like this. Okay, at different points. Now, this is how the spread of electrical impulse in conduction system happens from sinoarterial node. So, this is brighter color, that will, this is sinus node or sinoarterial node. So, I told you that there is a distance which has to be traveled will be more. Okay. Now, sinoarterial node, I mentioned it, move to the atrial syncytium. Atrial syncytium means this whole area, what do you see? It looks like a continuous structure, right. So, this is called atrial syncytium. Then it moves to the junctional fibers which are here, the junctional fibers. Then it moves to atrioventricular node or what we call as AV node. From there it moves to the AV bundles. Then it moves to the bundle branchings where the branching is taking place. Then it moves to the Purkinje fibers and that spreads out into the ventricular syncytium. So, between the atrial syncytium and ventricular syncytium there is quite a difference in the time, okay. And Electrical impulses spreads from the sinus node throughout the left and the right atria. Similarly, electrical impulses spread from bundle branches throughout the left and the right ventricle. Left bundle branch, and here you have the right bundle branch, and atrioventricular nodes are here, and bundle of He's are sitting here, and this is the sinus node. And this is how the electrical impulse is spreading across the conduction system. This is how the conduction system works. Okay. From here, let me give you a feel about the timing, which is very critical. So, what we will do, we will close in here, and then next class we will talk about the timing, and we will move on to the pacemaker and the EKGs. Okay. Thank you.